Joining me now is the Shadow Attorney-General and the Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians, Julian Leeser. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, Andrew. Good to be with you.
Let me start by asking about the Voice referendum proposal. Peter Dutton, your leader, wrote a letter to the PM about this at the start of the year with 15 questions, including how Aboriginal do you have to be to qualify to serve on the Voice. Here was the reaction from the member for Robertson, Gordon Reid, during the week to that question. One of Peter Dutton's questions on the Voice has been, is there going to be a definition of Aboriginal in terms of who can be on the Voice? What do you make of that?
Well, I'd say that's insulting. This is an issue that's extremely close to home. My grandmother, a Wiradjuri woman, a proud Minguleta elder on the New South Wales Central Coast, my dad, a proud Wiradjuri man, and myself. It'll be about consulting Indigenous people, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, about the issues that affect them, the issues that matter to them.
So he says that's an insulting question. What do you say to that?
Well, Peter Dutton wrote 15 questions to the Prime Minister and none of them remain answered. On the definition of Aboriginality, there are a series of different definitions in different pieces of legislation, the Social Security Act, the Childcare Act.
What definition would you like?
Well, the definition that's generally used is the one that comes from the Mabo case, which is descent, identification and recognition. But the government needs to be specific about what they're going to use in this body, because this is a question that Australians are asking. In fact, it's a question that's been raised with us by Aboriginal people as well.
All right, so what is the definition that you're looking for?
Well, we're asking the government to be clear about this, as we are with the other 14 questions that are there that Peter Dutton wrote to them about.
How many people back does it have to go for that Mabo definition to use? Or is any connection, any dissent?
This is a matter for the government to clarify, and we've asked the government to provide answers to that, as we've asked them to provide answers to who's going to be chosen, how will they be chosen, what powers and functions will the body have, how will it help close the gap? These are the series of questions not only that Australians are asking us, but clearly when you read reports from Labor Party gatherings in relation to promote the Voice, people are asking similar questions at Labor Party gatherings about this. The government needs to explain this to Australians if they expect people to vote for this in a referendum.
You've been an advocate for the Voice, but your leader doesn't seem too keen on it, does he?
Well, Peter Dutton has come to this debate with an open mind. That's what he said in his very first press conference on this issue. But he also said in the same press conference that he's looking for the detail, and we've been consistently asking for the detail, and the government doesn't seem to want to give us the detail. We maintain our position of having an open mind, and it's not just about what the coalition thinks about this. These are questions that we are being asked by people as we travel around the country. It's questions we're being asked by Aboriginal people, whether it's in the goldfields where Peter Dutton and I were a few weeks ago, whether it's on Palm Island, whether it's in Alice Springs or Seduna or Arnhem Land, or just in our own constituencies. People want to know what this body does, how it will function, how it will make a difference on the ground, how it will interact with other processes that the government is dealing with. Those are the questions that Australians have, and we want the government to answer them.
Fair enough to say the majority of the Liberal Party room opposes the Voice?
Well, look, there are a range of different views in our party room, and we will come to a view on this having conducted a proper party room process in due course.
All right, what about the referendum machinery bill then? Will you support that just to have the referendum, or might you block that, or might there be a conscience vote on that?
Well, the Referendum Machinery Provisions Act, which went through the House of Representatives in the last week and is in the Senate, has three elements that we wanted the government to address. Firstly, they should never have removed the yes and no case booklet, which has been there basically for every referendum in living memory.
And
they've put that back. Secondly, in an age of foreign interference and in an age where it is becoming more difficult to comply with the electoral laws of this country, it's important to have an official yes and no case. And thirdly, it's very important that both sides are funded so that Australians can hear
and they won't agree to
yes
that.
And no case. And
so
that's the government's
position. If they don't agree to that, will the coalition vote against the bill?
Well, we voted against the bill in the House of Representatives because the bill before the House of Representatives had none of those elements.
The Senate's what matters.
The Senate is where the negotiations are going forward. The government needs to talk to us about where they're going on these. These matters are being handled by my colleague Jane Hume, and she and her opposite number, Don Farrell, are dealing with these matters. I'd encourage the government to come to the party with the three things that we have asked for, because they are reasonable in terms of ensuring Australians can make an informed choice and ensuring that we don't have foreign interference.
And then you'll pass it. If you get those three things, you'll pass it.
That is basically what we've said.
Okay, so there was this stoush involving the referendum working group on Thursday. You've written to Mark Dreyfus about it. What do you make of that?
Well, I think we have to remember where all this started. The Prime Minister took a form of words to amend the Constitution to Garma. It's emerged in Senate estimates that he never consulted the Solicitor General. He didn't consult the Attorney-General's department about this. And now at 1:45, the Solicitor General has gone to talk to the referendum working group with the Attorney-General and identified that there's a problem with the government's wording, and they've proposed alternate wording. If Australians are going to vote on these matters, we need to see the Solicitor General's advice. We need to understand what the most senior government lawyer thinks are the issues and challenges with the words that the government has put forward.
Do you believe the Voice, if it gets up, should provide advice to executive government as well as Parliament?
Well, look, this is a matter for the government. I mean, we've seen they've changed the wording of this question since Garma once. They may change it again. I think it is for them to put this forward. It's for us to understand what the Solicitor General's concerns are. It's why we've asked for the government to release this advice.
And I assume you haven't had a response from Mr Dreyfus as yet?
Well, we wrote to him on Friday. We're waiting to hear back from him.
All right, we've seen the PM in India this week. As you know, you're chair of the Parliamentary Friendships of India. What's taken you to that position, and how important was this trip for the PM to undertake?
Well, I think the rise of India is an unalloyed good for Australia. We're two countries that share interests, we share an ocean boundary, we share values. India's the great democracy of our region. We are playing a more important and closer role together in relation to the Quad. Under the Morrison government, we negotiated a comprehensive strategic partnership. India is now among one of our most significant defence partners. We're doing exercises with India that we do with very few other nations. Australia is hosting Exercise Malabar, and under the Morrison government as well, we negotiated this trade agreement which provides greater access for Australians to the Indian education market. I think something like the population of Australia turns 18 every year in India, which is extraordinary in terms of an opportunity for Australia. Obviously, critical minerals are very important. Australia's a critical minerals superpower. India's a technology superpower. Working together, we can help shape the future of global communications technology. And so there's many opportunities with India. And of course, we have the wonderful diaspora here, over 700,000 Australians of Indian origin, which provide great people-to-people links. You can't go to a town in Australia, in the country or in our cities without seeing the Indian diaspora, and they make a fantastic contribution to our country.
Well, let me ask about AUKUS now. I've said this morning, it's my understanding it's in excess of $150 billion over 30 years, the spend of it. Do Australians just have to wear that cost?
Well, we are experiencing the most difficult and challenging strategic environment in our history. AUKUS was a product of the Morrison government. It was a central achievement, the negotiation of this agreement. And when Scott Morrison announced the agreement, he said we'd take a period of 18 months to look at the capabilities and look at what was the best options for Australia. And in the next couple of days, we will hear the announcement from the government as to the submarine program. The coalition's in lockstep with the government on this. We support AUKUS. It was our signature policy. We want to ensure that the submarines are delivered in a timely manner and that they're properly resourced, because for Australia's defence capability, given where we are and given the strategic environment we face, we've got to ensure that we have the capability to meet the challenges that we face.
Now, the PM said in India yesterday, this is why we need things like the super tax changes. We need as much revenue as we can get to pay for this. What do you say to that?
Well, I say when the coalition was in government, we took defence spending from 1938 levels to 2% of GDP. We committed to $270 billion worth of defence expenditure out to 2030, and we did all of that without raising taxes. We want to see the purchase of these submarines. We want to see the AUKUS program going forward. We offer bipartisan support for that. But we've demonstrated that you can provide for defence expenditure without raising taxes.
Would you be disappointed if the proposed Eastern Australia submarine base doesn't get off the ground?
Look, I think ultimately these are matters for the government, but the benefit of the AUKUS program is obviously access to nuclear submarine technology that only Britain and America have shared with each other, so this is a huge thing for Australia. It allows a country with a very large coastline like ours to defend ourselves, and it provides for jobs for Australians. But the details of that announcement we will see from the government in the next few days.
Just very brief now, as Shadow Attorney-General, what do you make of Tony Burke's interventions in these court cases on behalf of the STA and TWU?
Well, look, I'm not in favour of Tony Burke's interventions in these court cases. I don't think it's the right thing for him to be doing. These are private disputes between, businesses and their employees, and I think it's better left as between businesses and their employees.
The Coalition did intervene from time to time, though, on behalf of employers, probably.
Well, I think the principle is basically that you want employers and employees to make their own arrangements.
All right, just finally, the AAT, you've had a lot to say about this being abolished by the government. Would you, what can you say about this, and would you reinstate it if it returned to government?
Well, this isn't an abolition. This is a purge of people that were appointed by the Coalition. The government has basically gone around saying that there are people that were unqualified. Their so-called unqualified people include people who were university medalists, who've served on state tribunals, who've been registrars of the Supreme Court, a sex discrimination commissioner, the head of the Accounting Standards Board, people who have degrees from Oxford and Cambridge, partners in law firms, barristers of long standing. This is basically a political purge designed for Labor to stack the tribunal with its mates and to weaken the border.
You had a lot of Liberal-connected appointments, though.
Well, but when you look at
both sides seem to do it.
When you look at the list of people that Mr Dreyfus and Crikey and the Australia Institute want to get rid of, there are people who've just merely been members of the Liberal Party. This sounds McCarthyist to me. Service in the Parliament, either as a parliamentarian or as an advisor, should not preclude people from appointment if you're otherwise acceptably qualified. But the big issue, Andrew, here is that the AAT deals with our border protection matters. It allows people to appeal decisions of the migration officials. It allows people to appeal decisions about the character determinations when people get thrown out of the country, as Peter Dutton often did when people are sex offenders or bikies or engaged in organised crime. What I think this really is about is Labor trying to stack the tribunal with left-wing activists and Labor lawyers in order to undermine our border protection system. And we in the Coalition just will not stand for that.
Julian Leeser, thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks, Andrew.